All right, I think I'm all set. Hey, I-Man, good to see you in the chat. Alrighty, there's really no way to get back up here, huh? I hope I have enough shots of this place. What if there's a better angle we have? So let's see. Moving ourselves over this way. Yeah, these are just the gravestones I think we see over at Beast Temple in Dragon Barrow, right? So, aha. I can't remember what it looks like over here. Not too much. Yeah, but the idea is definitely like these are like curved walls almost. All right. Let's not expecting this to be 1-to-1, but if we were to try to envision this, because here's where the river pond thing is, right? Yeah, I'll be honest, I think looking at some of this stuff and the way they handle bridges and things, I actually think a lot of this would actually be like over here. Right? I think a lot of this would go on the northern side, probably. All right, and this would be where the boss fight and stuff would be happening. Uh-huh. And this is all pretty consistent with what we already could see. This I think is interesting because I can't tell if the idea is supposed to be there's like a big chunk missing. Like clearly there's something missing, right? Okay, no, it's disjointed. So yes, there is more of this, but it's at a higher elevation. Okay, yeah, that's definitely the problem. It's disjointed, and it's definitely supposed to be this goes higher, which is interesting because they don't really reflect this in terms of the land masses here, right? Oh no, they actually do, at least on this side. This side's where they kind of lower it over here, though. So maybe that changes. Hey, I am good to see you there, too. Also, let me move the thing so I can better see chat. Thought it was Bolt from the It's supposed to be Bolt from the blue, you know? That's the actual idiom, but... I thought that would have been too boring, so I had to do some twist on it. Yeah, so this is supposed to be more of the underground stuff. Which is very fascinating, because again, it's like, yeah, this is all underground, and you also have trees. Just kind of casually here. So what is it like? These trees are growing and there's like an overhang or something. Again, very curious how they set this up, you know? You know, I guess the idea would be more so the rock and everything would be blocked by actual infrastructure, right? Kind of like what we have here. Like this wall stuff would continue. It's just collapsed or missing. Howdy, Xavier. Definitely disjointed. Yeah, some of this, yeah, again, this, it's obvious that Farm Azula wasn't made with the idea that you could piece it back together, right? It was clearly just kind of like, you know, they were making an area first and trying to express maybe some semblance of what it once was in the process of making that area. So I'm not expecting it to be like perfect or anything. I just want to kind of get a general idea. I wonder if this is the only necropolis because the beastmen bury their dead in stone and just gradually built up a city. I could see. So here's how I think the process went. I think you have the beast coming under the dominion of the dragons and the Newman, right? The Elden Lord and his queen. And in the process of that, they start this beastman religion. And as part of that, there's the whole burial habits they make. And that slowly but surely kind of developed where it's like, okay, well, we need a Muslim to keep burying our dead. And in the process, they're living here, so they're going to also build more permanent settlements and homes. And I think before both of those, I think what took precedent, like I think probably what was the first thing they built were probably the temples, like here. Or, in fact, I would not even be surprised if their first temple was supposed to be the underground one they have here, right? I would be surprised if the idea is like this was the original core. They built the temples to like praise and shrine and worship and everything like that. The burials were happening alongside that, of course, and they built up the permanent town. And slowly but surely that got built out where it's like, no, we need to create a bigger temple. So you got this giant one where we fight Malekith here. And eventually they built out all of this. Yeah, so looking at this, you have a bit more of the mausoleum stuff because there's more of this upstairs, and we can already see like some of the remains and stuff. Now everyone's receiving the best final rites, as it were, right? You got the cat people here. Our wonderful feline. Our Sarashes. There we go, and then all right, I think this is a Nox type lever. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Yeah, I think this is the kind of lever you see in some Nox stuff, but I don't remember exactly. Or was it Ray Lucaria? It might have been Ray Lucaria stuff. I'm also been thinking about the petrifying stuff, and I'm wondering if it's not so much the idea that we have a bunch of red trees powered by Crucible, essentially, that are being turned to stone, so much as they are reverting to stone. Like, the idea was that, much like the dragons, how they're a combination of stone and gold, the first trees were also a combination of stone and gold. And that resulted in them appearing like this. But over time, much like with the dragons as they descend to the wyverns, the power of the Crucible stuff is slowly kind of draining out of them, and they're starting to kind of like revert back to their base building blocks of rock. I think Ronnie is Mod from Odinkind. Don't know what that is, I-Man, so I'll just say sure. Wait, I just had a thought. What if the beastmen are acting more animalistic because they're hollow? That could be it. Assuming that hollowing affects beastmen like it does humans, sure. There are a few questions I would have to have, like, for example, are beastmen technically under the same blessings and stuff as humans and things like that? Or are they like completely separate from all that? I don't know how to answer that. I just don't know. Granted, we have similar exposed rib cages, I think, here, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if the idea is like, yeah, they're essentially hollows. The problem is that we don't really see beasts affected by quote-unquote hollowing outside of what we've established are the crabs, who are eating hollows, and dogs, who also seem to or are very likely eating hollows, because they're all usually used in like a war dog context, a war hound context, I should maybe say better. So this makes me incredibly skeptical to just in general animals being affected by this breaking down of the order. Like, it feels like it really is kind of just like the humans who have specifically received a certain grace of gold with longevity and stuff like that, and they're the ones being affected by this in particular. Oh, this is fascinating to me. Yeah, this is fascinating to me. Because this wasn't here when we were looking from the other angle. Yeah, none of this really got shown. And now all this, though, is not being shown. That's fascinating. Just want to get rid of that. There we go. A little hard to see with my image that I'm putting up here, but well, some animals do have the sliver of gold in their eyes, if I recall correctly. Yeah, I'm not sure if that alone is enough, though. But again, it could just be an idea that Miyazaki and co didn't want to like portray it. Like, they didn't want everything to look like a hollow or something like that. So they let the animals look like normal-ish or whatever. So that's always a possibility. But I'm not sure if that's really enough. So, all right. So the river. There should be a river that's flowing between Beast Temple and stuff here, right? Now, there's always an argument to be had that maybe some of these bridges and things could have connected down here, but unfortunately, we have no real indication of that. There's no, like, broken bridge or something there, so we're really only kind of given the indication that, like, the water is, like, flowing around here, and there had to be some sort of bridge or something helping connect these in the past. There's also that corner where you get the Great Shield that has all the bushes petrified as well. Yeah, again, I think it's not like, when I say trees, I'm saying, let's talk about like the flora in general for this region. I think the idea would be that all the flora, trees and anything closely related to it is like, you know, technically stoneborn, right? Because again, like I said before, my thought process with the dragon seems to be that the Elden Ring stretches its quote-unquote roots into the earth and directly molds the rock into its own life forms, and because of that, it's made in the Elden Beast's image, resulting in the ancient dragons as we know them. Well, not as we know them. Technically, it's like a placky type ancient dragon, which we see, of course, buried deep in the ground, which seem to be more or less extinct. Probably because they all killed each other. But the point being is, like, you know, like the ancient dragon's general form ends up mirroring Elden Beast, it seems, because of that, because it was directly shaped by the Elden Ring itself. And well, the Elden Ring only has itself to reference, so duh. And then I think probably then the same idea would be true for the flora, where essentially if it's using rock as a basis to have its gold bring disparity to the earth, then why not do that for the flora side, since it's already done for the fauna side, right? In that case, I get the feeling that the idea is supposed to be like all of this had to evolve and change over time as it spread. And I guess the question would be how extensive was like the water and stuff. Like there's a real good question on like, does all the ocean originate from the lands between? Like, does all the water pour out into the ocean from here? And if so, what's the source of the water and stuff like that? That's like, you know, a completely, you know, separate, you know, area of inquiry that, you know, I'm not sure I'm even anywhere near able to start judging or even begin to evaluate. But I think when it comes to the question of just like, you know, the land stuff, if possible, I can see like, you know, if a seed of the Erd tree could travel across the water over into the world of man, then I think it's totally possible for plants and everything to be able to spread from the lands between across the entire world. I want to call the Placky dragons primordial dragons to contrast ancient and modern. The problem is I don't think we get a strong enough like difference, because at least with Placky, he has the multiple heads and things like that. But for the rest of the dragons, they seem to be otherwise basically normal-ish, maybe some slight variations in like other parts besides the head. And with Placky himself, we don't really see anything that wildly different from what the ancient dragons could do, right? He's just like, oh, he's stronger, he's bigger, he's Elden Lord. Okay, sure. But it seems to more or less kind of be within the same realm of, yeah, that makes sense for an ancient dragon. So at least personally, I would want to still stick with ancient dragon just to keep it simple to like, there's the two species or two, I guess you could even say two clans if you go by how the DLC frames it with Florisax, where it's like, okay, you have the clan of the wyverns and you have the clan of the ancient dragons. Water is water, yeah. You never know if water really is water when it comes to these cosmologies, you know? LME does have a tree/root-like tail, so it could still be said to be made in its image. Again, I'm saying made in its image and specifically to the beast stuff. But yeah, I would agree with you that we do see, definitely with the Elden Ring and maybe arguably with Elden Beast, also like a plant-like behavior from it. Like I said, I described the Elden Ring stuff as like roots, right? That were sprouting from it. And we, of course, see with, as I pointed out before, you see with runes, you leave runes behind, they start sprouting a tree. So I'm like, if we could get like golden phantom trees growing from there, now imagine like the great runes and stuff. If it doesn't give us a great tree like the Elden Ring, which like the Erd tree, which again, we see it does in the end, right? The Elden Ring ends up becoming the seed for a great tree. Then what can we say then about like a great forest? Maybe great runes could presumably create many more trees than just our quote-unquote small collection of runes does, right? So I see a lot of potential there. Okay, I want to see, because I know there's this stuff here and it's kind of broken. Is the idea supposed to be that this is kind of like a mirror image, and it's supposed to be kind of like a half circle type idea? There's like a circle here and a circle there. Because maybe then the idea could be something like this, but then it would kind of make the bridges seem really nonsensical. Unless, no, because you still have all the bridges here too. Now, granted, we don't see any real sign of bridges, I think, for any walls here. So maybe the idea would be something like this. So you have the bridges going up this way, and then the other side would go this way. Yeah, let's get a better look at this. I didn't get it. I should have done it when I was looking down, when I was all the way down there. Yeah, at least the way they're depicting it It doesn't look like it's supposed to be connected to anything. Like it's supposed to be kind of on its own. That actually works for us insofar as it does allow us to have a little more flexibility on how... Because you can also just have it where there's like some rock and space here. Yeah, you can also have it where you take some rock and space here. Got this tower here sinking and crap like that. Yeah, this is one of the problems you have with FA. Like, you have this sunken tower here filling up space, but then there's all this rock and stuff here. So, like, shouldn't this be, like, underground and stuff like that? Like, is this supposed to be just an overhang? Where was the point when the overhang kind of stopped? And you kind of got, like, all this earth here that's trying to... Right? And yeah, more of this. This one's more broken up, right? At some point, it's got to connect into this larger underground catacomb-like structure beneath the city. Would be funny if it was a port city. That would be funny. Like Farum Azula, like dragons don't go anywhere, yet they make trade with people outside eventually, right? They kind of just stay stuck in their city, but they're bringing in ships. The one port city in the entirety of the lands between, and it's the isolationist dragon country. Yeah, and this is supposed to be like the wall. The curved wall. Yeah, so it doesn't look like it's supposed to be connected here, but there's definitely supposed to be a continuation at some point. A little bit of an idea how far gone this would how far down this would have been allowed to go. Okay. Over here. Rar, rar, rar. Uh-huh. Now this... This is kind of similar to what we were seeing before. Obviously, we had like a bunch of tombstones blocking the way when we were up or higher originally. Oh yeah, more of this underground stuff here. It's partially there. This part doesn't really make sense. Because they're treating it as kind of like it's broken and not really aligned and stuff like that, but it looks pretty much just part of that, right? So this is more like them kind of just like shoving stuff together and hoping you don't notice from the different angles. They use the coffin ships for trading goods. Man, what a wonderful way to trade. I guess that's a way to get the mortuary business stimulated. Oh. Some architecture here just with the dome. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. There's our way to the city up top. So I think the general idea is like we have these like long curved mausoleums I guess kind of like the Royal Mausoleum in Ring City. I don't know if that was like the inspiration or whatever, but they seem to have gone with at least a similar idea. I don't know if there's like a real life reference or inspiration to like a structure like this. So like that one's gonna be that one's like a bit difficult for me to determine. But the idea seems to be similar enough that you have these large curved wall structures. You got some bridges and things. I also think it makes a lot more sense if the idea is like this would be low, like you flip it around, it would be connecting to the mountaintops, especially when we have like we go from the forge and start there. So I think that would also just make sense in terms of like just like continuity of like, you know, our travel and stuff like that, if they're going to teleport us around or what have you. And then this is more underground stuff. We have some more roots exposed here. Very clear idea we got. This is supposed to be a kind of giant wyvern skull. Corpse economy goes crazy. Bring out your dead so we can sell them. Yeah, so all this seems to be part of like an underground structure. Maybe they had some parts revealed or whatever. I think in general, the idea is supposed to be that Farum Azula was a very like rocky and like, or I should say craggy area. So there's lots of different elevations and things as it kind of like went from like plateaus to mountaintops back down to these like plateau highlands to lowlands in Caelid and Limgrave. So I think the idea is probably that this was probably a more jagged like area with a lot of different elevations. Man, imagine having to bring this thing in here like, oh my god. This is where it gets a little vague again for me. Like this stuff, it's like, okay, I get this. I get this. I get the signs of like gold and stuff in the ground and everything. Oh god. There we go. All right, and then so again, similar idea to show like the Elden Ring's influence in the past here. Corpses are currently on 50%. Sorry, I gotta do that again. Corpses are currently 50% on sale. Come get them. Be quick about it. And this is really good because we have like the sun directly on our guy here. So you have a little bit of exposed knees. I'll be honest, that looks like it's about it. A little bit of like, you know, remove fur here. But like, yeah, they look a little emaciated. And they're butt ugly. But like this, I could imagine just being a beastman's face, you know? Like this looks like this is just kind of how their heads go. So I'm not sure if the idea of hollowing completely jives. Interesting to think about for sure. Little bit. Just again, it's not like the entire leg or anything, right? Honestly, I can see this more because the idea may be that they've been on their forelegs for a bit, and because they're not really built or used to doing that, because, well, you know, been standing on two, they scrape themselves a lot. I could imagine something like that. The idea being they're not used to being on their knees. To me, it looks like an exposed skull. See, the problem I have with that idea is that this looks like their eyes and their eyelids and everything are pretty much set improper, right? Maybe it's just because of the pupil being like all black, but this doesn't look like it's an exposed skull, right? Like, this doesn't look like, oh, we ripped off the fur and the skin and now we're exposing this. Same thing with the way the nose is handled. I'm like to believe they just have this very bizarre face. Yeah, I kind of wish we had commentary in the design works about some of the enemies and stuff, or an interview. Like, the fact they stopped doing that stuff after Dark Souls 2, I get why, because it's DS2 and they probably were worried about being like, you know, this stuff doesn't really help us with PR or whatever. But I'm like, you know, that's a DS2 problem. That's not a design works problem. I do like that. I do like that. There we go. Something like this also works. Compare it to the skeletons. Yeah, the problem is, oh, I get what you mean. You mean compare it to the skeleton enemies. Yeah. We could do that. That's actually a really good way to at least have a more solid idea. Let's get I want to look at the jaws specifically here. They look like they have facial expressions. I don't know. The only facial expression I'm really seeing is pissed off. They look angry. Someone needs to give them a bar or something. Compared to this, we still have... again, this shows them seemingly feeding on it, so... Now, granted, you could always make the argument, oh no, it's because we have all the humans here, so they could be just eating any human hollows that are in Farum Azula. That's possible. But we still have like the exposed rib cage here. All right. Now this is interesting because we're still underground. Oh. We're still underground, right? Like all of this is supposed to be part of the underground. Yeah. Including all the stuff that we're about to go through here. Yeah, we're seeing a very different change in tone, and that we're not just seeing, you know, burial stuff in this section specifically, right? Like this looks like it could be like any such chamber. We see a lot of this worshiping stuff being done alongside of it with the dragons and things, and then even you could argue whether these are supposed to be mummies or just statues. That's another thing, is that They at least try to portray their beasts with like the Garank clothes, right? So there's a certain consistency in that portrayal. I think these are supposed to be just statues. I don't think these are supposed to be real, but who knows? Because we also have like these mummies here, and I guess you could always make the argument that they want to like statuefy themselves, maybe. That the idea of a Far Missoula mummy is to become a statue. There's no major difference with this guy, right? He like just wears like armor and crap. Yeah. Ask a beastman about his day and his face tells you everything. Yeah, even the upper floors has this. Not a lot of the meditating guys here. Or maybe it's because I'm not on that floor yet. I might need to go upstairs myself. Let me double check. No, still nothing. And this, yeah, so this would be like, oh, we're underground here, and then we take the lift up to the city. So this would have been like an entrance to it. Again, I feel like we've seen this stuff in relation to Godfrey. I don't remember exactly where I've seen these blue banners with like gold things, and I may just be hallucinating it. I know I got the impression from the concept art that they're petrified. Then it may just be that the in-game stuff doesn't convey it that well, or it was like misconstrued and it's still supposed to be like a petrification. Again, we see the same thing with the Nox Eternal Cities, where they don't do the best job with you know, throwing those things around with the statues. So it could be the same idea here very easily, because it seems really silly to just have statues of these guys in random corners, right? And again, if the idea is supposed to be these guys are hollows, having their model with the hollowed look, quote unquote, when they're petrifying would be a choice. But again, it would be kind of like using the Nameless King statue in Archdragon Peak in Dark Souls 3. It's like, okay, yeah, we just have to accept like the Nameless King's look is like, it's irrelevant. It's not important. It's not important for analysis and discussion because it's just silly. Just normal ass. Right? This is, I think, one of the more interesting ideas, because it's like, oh, this is all underground and stuff, right? But it's actually like part of like a mountainous level. So like, this is all like the entire idea is like you have the town and the city and stuff here. And this is like on the side of like this like cliff face and stuff like that coming out. Right? There we are. Just the bird. So this looks like it's supposed to be like it's smashed together, but it's not necessarily supposed to be this way, though they do a terrible job with the way this rock and stuff is connected here, right? Do a slightly better job, I guess, over here. Nah, it still doesn't really make much sense, because this is all clearly normal. Yeah. Yeah, they just don't do a good job with this part. Yeah, so the idea seems to just be Like this is just kind of, let's say the mountain town stuff. So if the idea, we have the right of it, it's like, oh, you have like these bridges to the mountaintops curving here, like a temple here, there's another one here, and then let's say like the town is like somewhere around here, then maybe the idea is like facing inward to the sea. There may be like something like this. So you could be like looking out to the ocean and stuff, and the rest of the lands between by extension from this type of angle. You also get the Drake Knight set from the chest at the very bottom. Yeah. Actually, BRB chat, I gotta go for a little second. There we go. Okay. Got that all sorted. Alrighty. So where were we? Ah, right. Talking about the whole inward look. So I think this, yeah, let's zoom it out this way. So I think this here would make the most sense if it's kind of like the Divine Tower. And it was kind of something that's just sort of hanging out here, you know? So you have like the big mountainous landmass going up either here and there and all that stuff, right? And again, we're descending from the mountaintop stuff, so it depends on where they want to. They could do it like Shadow Altus, where like Altus and Shadow Altus obviously weren't at the same elevation. They could do the same thing here. It's like, okay, we're not mountaintops level, but we're like a little bit higher up, and it's like, okay, we go down and up and down and up again and all that jazz. And then, like I said, we have one little curved wall there, one little curved wall there. You have the stuff here and the town, right? Because I think the idea would probably be generally that they're keeping, that this is kind of like supposed to be like a barrier wall. They make such a big deal about the idea of being like boulder walls and protection and all that stuff. Like there's such a huge emphasis of that. It definitely seems like these would be like the outer walls, definitely, for sure. I think that's also consistent with what we have here. As I said before, the river should be flowing this way through here. So I feel like if we have any like bodies of water and stuff that are flowing outward and creating like ponds and lakes and stuff like that, they should be coming from the south toward the north then. And that would all be consistent there. So something like this for all of that here. You get a little bit of like lakes, ponds, and things. Plus, because of how big they're able to make it, you could say that there's a lot of like filler land and stuff in between some of these areas and things to help kind of help expand out, like, you know, make this a little bit of a stringy type of capital and stuff, especially if it's got like a lot of, if it's like built into like mountains and stuff. So like it's underground, but it's like also kind of exposed, right? They did something similar with the Chalice dungeons with like the cut area, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, we're in the Chalice dungeon, you're descending, but then like the final boss battle, you come out and you're like, oh, I was descending like a mountain and stuff like that. And there's like exterior parts of the dungeon stuff that are like visible from outside on this mountain and like the mountain, you know? So like they've definitely played with these types of ideas before. Now, if I recall correctly, this is the same bridge we go with the Crucible Knight, right? Yeah, Crucible Knight was like here. These are like one of those exterior bridges. But this isn't really one of those locations for it. I'm a little confused on like the point. Because like, let's assume this wasn't broken. It goes straight. I guess it would be another one of these like, I guess it'd be like a small tower or something. Alternatively, if we take the style to be significant, and the other bridges were supposed to be connecting to the mountaintops, then something like this here might actually be the idea to connect us down here. At which point we could even move this even further out. Like, let's see if I flip this around. Nah, it wouldn't work that way because I flip this around. Like, it could work, but it would have to be flipped facing outward to the sea, which again, I'm not saying that's impossible or anything. It is. We'd have to move, though, a lot of other things like the town and things a bit further down. Again, and none of this is one-to-one or anything, so I think that's possible. You can make the argument if they really wanted to. Whoopsie. Yeah, there we go. This is the one. You make the argument if you really want to that we could put this and this stuff up here, because what's the point of having a long passageway here? Because there's going to be a huge separation between where you have your temple being built and where everyone is residing and stuff to travel to it, right? Like you're not building a long bridge like this for just anybody. So we have the bridge, we have land connected to the bridge. But it's not connected to the stuff related to the town. So that's consistent. And it's not really connected to anything essential otherwise. You have this temple thing, which it's built into. And I think there's some stuff, burial stuff in there. But it's basically its own thing. You could reconstruct some of it if possible. Again, I don't think personally that the devs necessarily had like a blueprint. Like maybe there was concept art for like a complete Farm Azula at one point. I shouldn't say that. There could have been like there could be somewhere deep in the Miyazaki from Soft Vault some concept art of like, you know, oh, Farm Azula before everything, and then like or a before and after type idea. It's totally possible. But I think they weren't really too concerned with getting the layout and stuff one-to-one and being like, oh, you could piece this all together if you tried. I don't think that was the goal. I think they were just making the area first and then trying to show the different stuff that they felt would be part of the land once upon a time as part of that area, including like the flora, the fauna. Like I think that was the idea of their expression. That said, I still think we can find some concepts and ideas, which whether or not the devs themselves thought too hard about it, do kind of reflect a general sentiment about how it would be laid out. So, for example, the bridge, like I said. You don't build a giant bridge to lead up to your big grand temple unless on the other end of that bridge is where all the people would be that would be coming to visit the temple. And there, by extension, the temple is separate from most of the other stuff where the people are residing and living. And if the idea is supposed to be that, you know, we have like this town structure that's here, right? We can't see it right now because it's not loaded in, but if the idea is you have this town with a bunch of catacombs and underground stuff that we've been going through, right? Which, as we can see, to some extent connects and leads up to here. Like, all of this is supposed to somehow be vaguely connected. If that's the case, then I can definitely see it. Or we have the temple here. Let me get an idea for how this would be structured, right? So, so this would be where it's at. Yeah, you guys can see that. So if we put the temple here, and then the bridge curves, yeah, that would actually work really well. And it would curve around. The way the bridge is curved could actually curve around the Divine Tower here. And if we have it even at an angle or somewhere closer here, right? Because the tower would give us the idea of like the limits of where the water is. And like I said, this would tell us where the river stuff is. So then you could have essentially these mausoleum wall barriers, essentially almost kind of similar to what we see here, right? But instead of it being like over here, it would be closer to the center over here, right? As kind of like these areas around the Beast Temple, which would actually, that would actually be very consistent because these areas also have the burial stuff. And obviously there's burial in one of the pillars there. So all of it would be very much worked together with this whole, you know, worship and mausoleum burial thing combined together. So yeah, basically a lot of that there. And then the rest of it is continued maybe in this southern area. So this would be the religious, let's call this like the religious center. And this would be like the residential center. And then in the residential center, that's where we would get all this and maybe some of this stuff here. Because again, this bridge would theoretically, if again, we have to, if we want to move like the residential and stuff further south, so we can have something like this bridge here, which is done the same style as those bridges over here with the iconography here and everything. That could then connect to Dragon Barrow that way. Might also be consistent with us seeing the Stormhawks here, right? Because the Stormhawks, obviously, like they can fly stuff, but they would be flying generally from the south northeast across the Dragon Barrow area in Caelid. So this would better reflect on that, right? Yeah, and this just kind of leads us down here. Not too much really to say here. It's hard to say how any of this would have connected anywhere. Like, how high would this have gone? Where would this have gone? Where would this bridge have led to with the lift and everything like that? You know? That's a little hard to determine now. Like, I could easily see this being part of, like, the tomb stuff, potentially. Also, it's really funny. It's really funny seeing how square it is when you look at it from this angle. All right. Look at it this way. All right. A lot easier when you're not attacking me, huh, bub? Pretty sure we see this stuff in like Stormvale and stuff like that, so I'm not gonna look too closely at that. Like I said, burial things, what have you, other mausoleum type stuff. Yeah, and this takes us up to the bridge. And this leads us just to more of the underground stuff we were at earlier. Of course, we got the dragons and things. Let me do that. Along the stones down, you can find harvestable gravel stones. Yeah, I do recall that. I'm not too surprised though, because we're already in a place where there's lots of ancient dragons and things like that. So it's like, okay, yeah, like gravel stones being like around by itself, I don't think that's that weird, unless the idea is supposed to be like you only find the gravel stone in like very specific spots, and therefore the implication is like it's being used as a storytelling device to tell you those spots used to be connected. So unless we have something like that going on. There we go. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And then we have the more exposed ones here. There we go. Got the placky heads. This I want to do in case I like ever edit together like a comparison. This is the only place I remember there being harvestable gravel stones at all. Yeah, I'm also surprised they never did Fulgur blooms here. I mean, I guess in retrospect with the DLC and them adding like red Fulgur blooms, I guess that might have been the smart decision if they want to avoid kind of stepping on themselves later down the line. But I do find it kind of funny where it's like, ah, yeah, all that lightning power, and I guess they just never used it enough to ever have Fulgur blooms in the past. I guess you could also make an argument that maybe the ground's just been so torn up that any Fulgur bloom patches would have been destroyed. I guess. Yeah, it's just kind of funny to think about. All right. All right. Yeah, but this just leads back to more of the underground stuff we've already been in. Curves down, then becomes a bit of a normal bridge. Back up here. because I couldn't remember how exactly they set this up. But yeah, okay. It is, but the idea is supposed to be that yes, there's a hole, but it's supposed to be inside or anything. It's not like it's exposed to the bottom of the abyss down to the ocean. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when we were what, like back over here-ish, I think it just looked like it was exposed, like we could see everything down there. Also, how big are those statues? Oh wow, yeah, that statue's a lot bigger. Yeah, like I'm pretty sure like if I put myself next to it, I would be like up to like the prayer hands. I think that statue's, yeah, a lot bigger than I thought it was originally, right? Yeah, like look at me compared to the candles here. And look at the candles up there. Like I am maybe up to this thing's ear tip. Oh, big lady. Big lady. I gotta do this again. There we go. Just want to highlight the plant in the hair. Nothing else really falls under there. Uh-huh. Just get me far away from there. All right. Yeah, something like that. There we go. All right, so I think that covers what I want to look at here. A bit of a shorter stream, but I think that I accomplished what I needed here. Got a better general idea of what I wanted. Planet here reminds me of the gloveworts with the bell-esque flowers. Yeah, I wonder if there was a reference specific for that, or if there's some specific particular symbolism, something to look into. But anyway, I think I'm gonna end things here then, because a little earlier than usual, but I think I accomplished what I wanted. And yeah, I just wanted to do some looking at Afar Missoula and see if I could figure out the map or anything, see if that helped, because, you know, stuff spinning in my head about some of that early stuff and if it could be significant. And who knows, maybe this will work to my advantage. But anyway, that's for me to worry about later. So